probably the easiest thing that you can do in Revit is add doors and windows, or remove them, or move them, or swap them over for other things. They are well made, the door families and the window families that you get with Revit. It's not necessarily the case that all doors and windows will be as well made, but we will have a look at the family editor as well, just to see what exactly goes on to making a well-made door. But we'll start off by seeing how to apply them. Now you can apply them in elevation, in 3D, or in plan mode. So we'll go into the level 0 plan first. This is going to predefine really the position of the door, and I've changed the plan. I made it slightly more suitable for a house layout, and this is called Walls and Doors Complete Shell. So again, available, or use the one you've created, it makes no difference. The walls will all contain doors and windows. So we go to doors, start off with doors, and we click on door. And I've hit the drop down. You might not get all these options simply because I've loaded up a few others. Now you can't click on this grey bit, but it's these white bits underneath that give us the types of this external double door flush. Now we've got external single number 2. We've got external single with a panel. So how do we get all these into the system? And we've got internal doors there. We can click load. So modify place door. We get this one. You've got other things as well. You can model a door in place if you really felt the urge, or you could tag these things on placement. We'll cover tagging and keynoting a little bit later, but load family. And we come down to the doors, and then we'll go to external doors to start off with, and double click that, and these are the ones that we've got by default loaded into the software. Now these aren't loaded into the project, these are available in the software folders, and if we wanted to click on one, we get a little visual of how it's going to appear on here. Okay, so you've got a fair selection of doors. We'll look at putting this one in, the external single with side panel, and that's going to be 1360 by 2110. So we'll close that down because I've already got this loaded, but again, if you haven't got it loaded, then feel free to load it or any other external door. And as it's selected, we can now move our mouse around, and if it lines up with a wall, it'll position a door. Okay, so it does a little bit of juggling around. So I'll zoom in a bit closer so we can put our main entrance door here. So depending on sort of which side of the wall you're aiming at with your cursor, it's going to either go that way or this way. But if you hit the, but I could also reposition it with the spacebar. So if I move it one side or the other, then I can hand it one way or the other as well. So that's just tapping the spacebar as I'm hovering it into position. So I want the glazing panel to go the other side, so I'll just hit the spacebar. I could always do it after the event, but it's sometimes nice to do it as we go along, and just line it up. Again, you see the witness lines, click there, and that's going to form the opening. So what we've now got, and we'll go into 3D mode so we can see it, we'll come round to this bit. This is what's happened. So it's come in at this ground level, and it's formed an opening, and it's positioned the door. Now if I wanted to reposition that in elevation or 3D, I can select it, and again you see all these temporary dimensions. You can adjust the witness lines like you did before and change these values. It's not so easy to see in this mode, but I could change it to hidden line so we might have a better view of it. Another thing I could do for the purposes of this, if I went into an elevation, so we're looking at the south elevation, I think. Yeah. If I wanted to change what we can see in this elevation, so I can get rid of the brick, we can again go into the temporary graphic overrides. So if I select this surface and then select all instances in entire project, and then right click on that and override graphics in view by element, and surface patterns, let's untick visible and apply that. So then we can say okay, so now we can't see any of that brickwork on this bit, so it makes life a little bit easier when we're viewing these things. So it's come in at the ground line and it's just positioned it within the door. We'll have a look at it in the section. I can't remember which section we're looking at, but if we draw this section through this door, and then we can right click on this, go to view, and now we can see this door positioned at that opening. So this is looking all pretty good. Now a couple of things that we might want to do, we might want to move the door further back or extend it slightly further forward. But with the frame sitting at just this point, and also notice that in elevation you get to see that brickwork line. So it's really nicely done, the way it all works. At crude mode, if we go to fine, then we get these sorts of things. Now, things that we don't get, the lintels and all that sort of stuff, this would never really appear at this sort of level of detail. You would overlay this with a call out, and then we'll draw in the different types of detailing that we require for a detailed drawing. As far as Revit is concerned, stuff at this sort of level, 1 to 50, 1 to 100, is all kind of indicative, and what you do get is the count of the door, the number of the doors, the type of the door, the position of the door, so in plan, elevation and section. And what that does mean is that you get full appreciation of the door and its location to other objects within the project. And what it doesn't do, and that's quite rightly in my opinion, is deal with the detail at this sort of scale. You wouldn't really want to model all the bits and pieces that go in that. So what you do get, and we'll go back to the floor plan, are some elements which form these sorts of things. This is a cavity closer, which you get in plan, and then you get the sill and the back plate, and you get all this sort of stuff going on as well. So if you did want to change the thickness of this cavity closer, then you can do that in the door type properties. So if I just click on this for a second, and then we go to edit type, then we'll see that on our type properties we've got things like, see that if we come right down to, I think it's probably under dimensions, we've got this thing here, cavity closer width 50, so that's this depth, that's okay, and cavity closer depth is 85. So if we knew that this cavity was 75 mil, then we could change this for 75. And you would probably want to do that across the board. And that's going to update all of those instances, and then that closes that down to make it work properly. Again, we've got offset from external 102.5, that's the distance it sits from there. So all of these sorts of things are available under the type properties. Every single one of these is a parameter that has been put in and modeled by somebody who's created it. So loads and loads of different things that we can see. This door swing and the door position, this is a different type of line, and I'll remember what it is in a minute, but I can't remember what these are called. They're not model lines, they are not reference lines, they are something else, something that begins with indicative or something like that. The only way I'm going to find out is if I right click and go to edit family, and then this takes us into the door family, so you might as well jump into this as we've just looked at that cavity closer thing. If I go to ref plane, double click that, this is what makes up the door. So it's not just something simple. So that cavity closer offset from external that we looked at, that's this distance here. This is a parameter. And if I change that to maybe 1 to 1, we might get some smaller text so we can see what's going on. Now this is set to 102.5 because it's the thickness of some external brickwork, but you could create a door type that had a blockwork or a different type of cavity closer offset depth, or you can just model it inside the project. And providing your external skin is the same material, then it shouldn't be a problem. If you've got a door that's going to be positioned inside some brickwork and some blockwork with some render, then you're going to have to make a new version of this type so that the cavity closer offset is going to be different for both door types. So these lines, which name is eluding me still, are called symbolic lines. There you go, symbolic lines. So they're not part of the actual model. So this thing here isn't part of the model. This is part of the 2D view that you get. So you don't see this in 3D. You only see this in plan view. Okay, you don't see some of the other stuff in 3D. So these symbolic lines are something that you need to think about if you're going to create these types of door. But loads and loads of different reference lines and reference planes that are going on. This is the main reference plane that runs through, and you can see I've just clicked on that. Lots of things are locked to it. Door panel thickness, cavity closer depth. This side, this is reading the amendment that we made to this door type. Cavity closure offsets on the back as well, and frame offset external. So all of these things can be adjusted. We look at the elevation, exterior. Again, we can see lots and lots of different reference planes. So they're not just going in plan view, they are going in elevation and in section view as well. So let's just go sections. Section 1, well, again we'll see lots and lots of different reference planes that have been used. So these are the positions of the mullions or the transoms for the panels and the glazing. So all of these things do need to be considered if you're going to use families that are going to be flexible within the project. So we'll just close this down. To get out of this, we'll just close this down and make sure we don't save anything. So no save to that. Let's cancel that. So that's that one door. Okay, we've had a good look at what makes it up and how it's very flexible within the project. We can add some other types of door. So go back to the architecture and go up to door, and let's look at some internal doors. So I'll choose a 910 by 2110, and we can have them just positioned. Again, you don't need to consider too much the positioning of them just yet, but just pops them in just to see how easy they are to put in. And then you've got these witness lines, so you can select the door, you can flip it one way, flip it another way, select these values, move that witness line, move this witness line, and adjust the positions of the doors. So you wouldn't necessarily want two doors there. Maybe you want it coming in this way, so we'll select this one and delete it, and again the hole gets sealed up. So the application of doors, very, very simple. Windows are exactly the same. The only thing about a window, when you bring it in, we'll go back to our south elevation because we've cleared the cladding pattern in this south elevation. If I choose a window, we've got a sill height that is set for the moment. The head height and the sill height are set. And when I bring it in to an elevation, when it reaches that sort of 1200 sill height, it's going to throw out that little blue line. Okay, so and again, position these things. You can also array these things, and up here it's going to be 1200 above this next level, and you might not necessarily get them to line up. But now this is interesting because I've positioned it there and it says insert conflicts with joined wall. So there's a wall on the inside, but we'll continue on, and then we can move this one like so. So I could make this override graphics in view by element, and I can go for surface transparency on this. I could use a wireframe, but that might be a little bit confusing. So I can say 70%, apply. Okay, now I can see that wall there, so I can move this, say 150 mil from it. So I just move it across first, and then we can select it. So this witness line moved up to this internal face of the wall. We can set that to say 150, and then we've juggled it there. We got 1200 here as well. So these are all lined up. If anything isn't lined up, say this was put in like so, then it's just a question of changing this value to get it back up. Alternatively, if we weren't looking in the elevation view and we were looking at level 1, let's say for example we've got these windows put in here and we've got some other ones put in here. This one here has got the sill height at 1 meter, so we'll set our sill height to 112.00 and apply that, and then that's moved this window up. So the windows and the doors can be put in plan as well as elevation. In this case I'll put a different type of window in, so we'll go for a bigger one, and again this 1200 sill height is going to allow me to position this window. And we've got the similar thing with the cavity closer, so the sill is going that way around, and so I'll put another one there like so. So this is how windows and doors go in. It is the easiest thing that you'll ever find to do in Revit. So the most important aspects are to choose the type of window, to appreciate what's going on with the window and how you can adjust certain settings, and the witness lines and the flipping of doors in plan view. And the reason I can do that with this underlay object is simply because I've got this thing here, select underlay objects selected. If I was to click it so the little cross appeared, then I couldn't select them, I couldn't do anything with them. So this thing can be quite useful to adjust certain aspects of these doors. Okay, so we'll leave that at that. Now I'll finish adding doors and windows to this little shell, and then I can show you how they can be scheduled.